All right, we're about 48 hours out from Worlds, and I've been thinking about it and pondering it, and there was so much stuff that I wanted to include in the video, but it was already 20 minutes long. So here's all the key takeaways about Worlds that I never actually got to talk about. All right, first thing brought up, I actually didn't even know about this, but the Finnish viewership was actually outstanding for Finnish cable, I believe. So about 600,000 concurrent viewers watched this tournament, at least at its peak, marking probably one of the highest viewerships we've ever seen, besides like maybe the very first CBS stream in like COVID era. But for the modern era, that is outstanding. I think that is a huge benchmark that disc golf is very much alive. It's not just in our like little subculture of disc golf. It can be very popular anywhere in the world. But to go along with that, something that I also did not mention, I mentioned like lower payouts, but I did not mention the total payouts, and that's actually $100,000 less than last year. And last year was outstanding. It was an amazing tournament with amazing sponsors. But this year, there were sponsorships everywhere. There were mainstream sponsorships. They were on T-pads. They were everywhere you walk. So the sponsors were clearly there, willing to pay. But the fact that we didn't get it necessarily correlated to payouts feels very strange and obscure, and it feels like, who is to blame for that? Like, I feel like it has to be UC for setting up payment structure for advertisers. He probably has like a million hats, so I don't really know who to attribute that to, but it definitely feels a little bit odd for such a massive event. And another sort of correction, I think I mentioned 10,000 fans. It was almost certainly more than that. Probably closer to 13, 14,000. Now, I will say, I also didn't mention, GA was free. So many people watching this event, if they were just watching it from afar, they didn't have to pay. So that's also going to include a lot of people watching this event that don't even know what disc golf is, but that's totally fine. Disc Golf Worlds is not about making the absolute most amount of money per dollar per ticket. I think the massive turnout is definitely indicative that we need to have Worlds in a very centralized location. And it doesn't have to be a big city. If anything, it shouldn't be in a big city. But on the flip side, it's not going to fail because it's in that city. It kind of needs to be like that middle ground. And I think Nokia fits that so very well. Being Nokia, it's extremely easy to get to for any European country. So that's also a major important point to make. And another point I want to bring up about media is that there was 100, I want to reiterate that, 100 media credentials given out. And I can definitely tell you, at points, I felt it. It was insane, especially hole 18. There was so many people with the yellow vests on. I felt like, oh wow, I am just in a sea of yellow vests, which is in a lot of ways a great thing. So many people want to capture this event, making it feel that much more important. And while there was a lot of people recording good stuff, on the flip side, there also were so many people with yellow vests that didn't even have a camera. And I was like, okay, like not to be that guy, but like, why do you have the yellow vest? Why do you have so much access to stuff if you're literally not doing anything? And then besides that, there was people with yellow vests that were obviously like making cable news productions. And I'm not even sure if I should say this, but they were literally backed off. They were recording chase card coverage. And one of the PGA guys said, if you do not get behind the spectator line, I will pull your media creds and you will not be able to film this event. So that was certainly interesting to witness because like, if the news broadcasters can't record this event, like what am I doing here? But that kind of shows you the scope and scale of this event. So many people wanting to film, whether it was Finnish media, European media, MDG, YouTube content like me, Disc Golf World Broderick, all these people, wide ranging. I feel like literally anybody that had any interest in sports media was there recording this event. So it got hectic. But then stuff like day 1, day 2, day 3, especially on FPO, there were no yellow vests. It was literally just me. And I'm wondering like, okay, well, how are there 100 people with media credentials, but yet nobody wants to record these people that obviously are very important because they are the product? And I don't really know what to make of that. I've been thinking about it a lot, and maybe it's just like, there's not a story there. People don't care about how Lehtomaki does in round 2 because it just didn't really ultimately matter. Like, I don't know. I don't really know. And next up, I want to bring up the scope and scale of this event. Like not even just the fans and media, but the entire scale of the beast, of the monster, of the professionalism on this course, and just the effort spent from the team to make this one of the best worlds ever. And truthfully for me, I think the bar was set so incredibly high at this event that no US worlds that I see anytime soon will match that. I might be having some European rose tinted glasses here, but I truthfully think the professionalism, the level of effort on every single detail, even just the small stuff like having a media tent right after hole 18 that you can easily get access to and record post-round interviews, all this stuff made it feel so important and like this stuff actually matters. And again, I don't want to be elitist. I don't want to say like New London or Brewster Ridge or Emporia wouldn't have this professionalism, but it certainly felt like a notch above anything I've ever seen and ever probably will see. And my next key takeaway was undoubtedly the thing that made me able to walk the entire 44 miles of Worlds. That was my Vessies. These shoes have brought so much consistency and grip on my disc golf rounds, and I'm certain they will do the same for you. With not only grip, but the ability to walk in puddles and stay dry, as well as maintain its durability through the years. Because I've actually used the same pair of Vessies for over 18 months and still been able to use it on the next disc golf round. Is it going to make you able to play at the next Worlds? No. I'm still an 830 rated absolute noob at disc golf, but it gives me so much comfort and reliability, and I know it'll do the same for you. If you want 15% off your first order, go to vessi.com/wildruns. But with that, let's bring up the fanfare, because it was definitely a major component of this Worlds. Now, I know courses like Brewster Ridge, like New London, are never going to have the same amount of fanfare as hole 16 at the Beast. I mean, that was just insane. But I think the legitimacy of this whole event was really improved by being able to be just like a normal person that doesn't care about disc golf, watching hole 16 and just sitting there and being like, whoa. Like, this requires a lot of accuracy, a lot of skill, but being able to just know intuitively that this is a hard hole, this is a hard challenge, and watching so many pros either succeed or fail and continue to fail, it all kind of brings up the hype and intensity of this very moment, and especially final round MPO, having 10,000 plus people cheering you on after you make hole 16. It was insane, and it really just adds to how palpable and important that moment is. And while sure Tallinn, Estonia is a great fanfare experience, I've heard there's a ton of activities there, I think the intuitiveness and hype of hole 16 is something that we can probably never replicate with most courses. And also another point I want to bring up with that is that Tallinn apparently did have a ton of activities and a ton of stuff that made it very family friendly. And while I ultimately don't think that's a very important goal for when they do have Worlds, I think that it's just definitely a nice to have, because if you are trying to be wide-ranging and approachable to many people, you need to be family friendly. That's not to say that the Beast wasn't, but the Monster is almost certainly a very difficult thing to do with a family. I will say it was the best course I think I've ever been to, but family friendly and ease of access, maybe not a 10 out of 10. And next up, kind of selfishly, I want to bring up the media benefits and the professionalism of this Pro Tour, because they were definitely outstanding. And while me and so many other people would love to film Chase and League Card up close, that probably would have been a little hectic for 100 media cred people. But having said that, I felt like I was an equal. This is like the first true event where I felt equal to everyone else on the Pro Tour. I was able to talk with Jeff Spring, with UC, and I don't really think that's ever happened before. It felt like what I was asking him actually mattered and that he wanted to fix my problems. And I feel like that is a point that the Pro Tour, at least in the past, this isn't to say now, but at least in the past, has really missed the mark on, where it feels like media is really just like a second-rate citizen. Here, I felt totally equal, and like everything that I wanted to accomplish with filming was going to be helped and aided, especially on hole 18, where there was an actual booth where all the media could actually film when Gannon makes his putt and when Lehtomaki doesn't actually make the putt, but Ohn does and she wins. All those moments we got actual close access to, and I cannot understate how nice that is. But to go along with that, seeing all the forms of media was actually super, super sick. You got to see people with like professional photography lenses that are like huge, like 200 millimeter zoom lenses. That's sick. You had people like cranking out an article the second after MPO ended. So obviously that's like written media, and I really don't think about written media all that often, but it's cool that it exists and that it's actually being worked on. Then of course you have the broadcasters, and that is just crazy. Having a full news broadcast of Worlds, that is like truly my dream. And it just felt like, okay, yeah, this stuff actually matters. All right, so with that, let's talk about the takeaways from the course and the players. I know I mentioned it a little bit in the other videos, but the Monster was definitely a little bit fluky. I've been thinking about it more, and I ultimately don't think it's super important, but there were just a couple players that got absolutely wrecked by that hole, and they effectively lost the entire tournament because of one hole. And then on the Beast, a lot of people like Missy or Lehtomaki got absolutely wrecked by hole 16. Now, is that to say we shouldn't have hard holes? No, but I do think an extreme punishment that ruins an entire player's chances in a matter of one hole feels a little bit gimmicky. But I ultimately do love the gimmick, so I don't really know where I stand with that. I think the key takeaway is just that these exist, and it feels more like a USGGC event and not like a Worlds event. And so I guess I'd like to see more natural OB and not just bunker rules on a very hard island hole. And the last thing about courses is how pristinely nice it was manicured. Every fairway looked nearly perfect. And not only that, but the grass line made it very clear what was inbounds, what was out of bounds, making it very easy for non-disc golfers to understand, okay, the disc needs to be here, not here, because this is where the high grass is. And it's all the small things that like in Elite Series, you probably don't think about very much, but in a Worlds where you have have so many non-disc golfers watching, you kind of need to have it perfect, and I feel like they did that great. Okay, so on to the players. I felt like the number one standout key takeaway was how Lehtomaki just ran away with the storyline of FPO. Ultimately, didn't pan out in a very kind of tragic way, but being a 15-year-old in Finland, oh my goodness, nobody could talk about literally anything else. Even Kristen DNFing was not nearly as impactful as this 15-year-old. And it almost felt like at moments people cared more about her than Niklas. Obviously, no, that's not the case, especially when you see how many people showed up for Niklas in the final round. But my goodness, every time Lehtomaki made anything, the crowd went insane. And I want to reiterate, she could have had the highest rated FPO round in history had she had birdied hole 16. I mean, what ifs aren't super important, but that would have been insane. And along with that, she would have been the first FPO player, and I think maybe the only player, to win their very first Worlds besides the inception of Worlds. That's insane. But we have to talk about Ohn the dog. So now that she has won, does her retirement look to be sooner? My key takeaway is her retirement is almost certainly going to be coming sooner rather than later. I feel like in part of her interview, she kind of mentioned like how hard she works, how old she is, how it's really hard to get distance. And I personally think that her days are a little bit numbered for the Pro Tour. Like, sure, she might play Masters, but like a lot of events, they really don't line up well for her, and she can still play good. But I think she is and kind of has been losing her total focus and her ability to keep throwing the way that she likes. So I think the days of Ohn winning an event is probably this season, next season, and maybe one more, and then she's done. So on to MPO. Now that Gannon has that world title, what does he kind of shoot for? Will he have a regression in the next couple of seasons? I almost certainly think yes. I think he's worked so incredibly hard. He is so focused. He is still a little bit of a psychopath, so I don't think he'll truly have a regression, but at least not winning majors, I think that will almost certainly be the case. Because I mean, look at Isaac, look at Paul, all these top elite pros that have won majors, they have regressions. Like obviously they still win majors. Isaac literally won a major this year. But I think in terms of Gannon winning everything, I think we'll have a slight regression for a couple of years. Because he has the ability to kind of relax a bit, understand that yes, he's accomplished the number one goal that he always wanted to accomplish, but because he is so dialed and so focused, only time will tell. But speaking of focus, we need to talk about Niklas. He has been so focused. I don't think you understand how intense my interview was with him. This was after the ceremony, but you can just feel the emotion before you even talk to the players. Like, you know what kind of vibe you're getting. And Niklas was going through it, man. It was rough. So for me, my key takeaway is that he is going to be literally the most focused player that exists on USDGC on the next couple majors. I've been wanting him to win a major, and I thought this was going to be the moment in Finland. Did not pan out, and ultimately I didn't really think he was that close in the final round until the very end because he had some lackluster middle rounds. So I think now, more than ever, even after last Worlds where he almost won that, I think now he's going to be super hungry and focused on the next USGGC, and I think that is definitely a course where he could win. Because if you don't remember, he almost won, but then Gannon took it away. And to go along with that, I think this proves how important consistency is at Worlds, because you had people like Ezra with a 14 under at the Monster, you had AV with 15 under on the Beast, some of the best rounds we have ever seen, and they weren't even top 3. And you had Gannon getting a kind of mid-round. It was still a totally fine 2 rounds of 1050, but it goes to show that you don't need perfection. You just need consistently good rounds with no breakout round, just good. Which is very contrarian to what a lot of people say in the post-round interviews, where they said they have to push, they're not going to win unless they push. I think Paul has that mentality that he needs to push every single event, and that's kind of what leads you to a little bit of downfall, I think. I think if you push too hard on a lot of these holes, you get bitten. And I mean, look at Ella. She literally broke the course record and still didn't win. But with that, my final key takeaway is that this Worlds was fun. I've been to Worlds before where they were electric, the courses were amazing, but this one was fun. And I've heard a lot of people say this was the best Worlds ever, and I know I mentioned that it wasn't the best Worlds ever, but I think in terms of having the most amount of fun and seeing all these players play at their most elite levels, it was there. But as far as a full event, I think this probably rivals Utah, if not a little bit better, with so much of a big boost coming from the insane amount of fanfare at this event. But with that said, I would love to know what you guys think. Did you go to Worlds? Did you just watch it on coverage? Did you think coverage showed the amplitude and the insanity of the event? Or did you feel like it was just another DGPT event? I'd love to know. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching my videos and the insane amount of followers and growth I've had about Worlds. It's been extremely rewarding because I've worked my ass off to get all these clips, all this footage, and it feels like a lot of times it just doesn't matter. But seeing how many people have reached out to me, has commented, and shown love on my videos, I cannot tell you how much that means to me. So with that, Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.